You bought that new watch and now you want to wear it, but the bracelet is too long or there is that scratch on the crystal and the local watchmaker enjoys his or her vacations and you cannot wear your brand new watch the next 2 weeks and you're very frustrated and you ask yourself, what can you do? Answer, a lot. Welcome to Caseback Watches, my name is Tim and ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest, watchmakers can be a pain. In absence, in case of vacations, or sometimes they're grumpy, sometimes they're overworked, sometimes they just don't like you and they don't want to shorten your bracelet. And the good news is here that you can do a lot yourself. Personally, I'm not a watchmaker. I'm in no form trained in that direction, but even I could learn how to do certain things so that you don't have to leave the house and wait there in the line at your local watchmaker shop when you only want a new battery or a set lengthening your bracelet, or you have other minor things you want to fix. By the way, still wearing the Tudor Date two-tone, and it's really ridiculous how I love this watch now, how often I wear it. But all right, without further ado, let's go in the light box. There I will show you my gear, my tools or other things that are very functional. They are not really tools, but they're functional and helpful, and they are very easy to get, very easy to buy. When I find them on Amazon, then I will place links here in the description. Okay, and now let's do it. Alright, and here we are with the first tool. We all have one, I think, and we don't use it so often because when do you really have to open a watch? It's very, very seldom. Because, I mean, if you have your collection of vintage Omegas, then you have to open cases because Omega writes movement numbers and these movement numbers indicate the age of your watch. But for other use, why should you open a watch? And so my recommendation here is you want to buy something like that, do it. They're not very expensive, but use them wisely. For example, you shouldn't just open the watch only to see the movement, something like that. It's a bit risky because casebacks have rubber sealings and you can misalign these sealings and then your watch is not longer waterproof without your knowledge, and this of course can cause major disasters. So not really important, easy to use, but if you don't have one, relax, I think you don't need it. And the next tool of choice here are screwdrivers. Watchmaker screwdrivers, very handy, for example, when you want to alter your metal bracelet yourself. We all know there are two systems in place, screws for your metal bracelets, like this Laurier, for example, or you have pins. For example, if you have an old Speedmaster, Omega Speedmaster reduced, then you have the pins, and these pins you hammer out with another tool. I will show you this as well, but here you have screws, and this is of course very handy, very easy to operate. But important to know is here that you shouldn't buy these super cheap, okay? Because they don't last and it's a pain to work with. Then you have breaking tips and something like that. A quality screwdriver has here a little screw so that you can change the tip. And the other side here is a bit loose so that you can take it like this and you can then unscrew or screw a bracelet. In these packages you find various sizes marked by color. But this is a big recommendation. You find these toolboxes on Amazon with all sizes, and to be honest, they're very good. They're very usable in your household when you have something tiny. And I think I don't have to explain how you alter a bracelet now. You just take the screwdriver that fits best and then you unscrew the thing. Sometimes they are very, very tight. Sometimes there's a bit of Loctite on it, so this is a sort of a glue, and then you have to break it with a quick move. And the next tool then is, or are, tools to alter bracelets with pins. Looks like that. And the idea here is very simple. If this was a watch with a pinned bracelet, then you would find, a bit of discipline here please, then you would find arrows inside. And these arrows or markers indicate the direction the pin must be hammered out. And sometimes it's a bit confusion. You find pins, hammered pins, with a little slit on one end, and then you think, oh, this is a screwed bracelet or bracelet with screws, but they're not. Often they place this slit as a marker so that you don't confuse the ends, the different ends of the pin. For example, when one end is a bit thicker than the other. And now you can buy these things here in various sizes for various pins. And a very important part is this plastic thing, because this is some sort of a holder for the bracelet. Excuse me, it's hard to do this with the camera in front of my nose, but I think you get the idea. You can place it like this, and then you can hammer out a pin. And with hammer out, I mean hammer out. You just put this thing here on the pin, and then you hammer it out with that plastic tip here, and that's it. Another important information here is now that sometimes you find a little tube inside the bracelet. The tube goes around the actual pin, and when you hammer this thing out, when you hammer the pin out, then often you find a tiny tube on this piece of paper here, and you shouldn't lose that tube. Very important, because without it doesn't work anymore. So don't get confused when you find that tube. Don't lose it. Don't throw it away. You have to place it around the pin when you hammer it in again. And this tool set here you find also on Amazon, is available all over the planet, not very expensive. I mean, you can buy super expensive watchmaking tools for everyday use. Then a single screwdriver can set you back 20, and this thing costs then 50 or what. But when you use it occasionally, I think it's not really necessary, because at the end we have some pieces of metal, a piece of plastic and a little hammer. This is absolute low tech, and so there's no need to spend the really big money on it. These tools here will do the job just fine. And sometimes we have the situation that we want to get rid of a bracelet. Let's assume you want to change this against the leather strap. In this example here, it's pretty easy, because you have here these holes, and you can use these hammering out pin tools to just manipulate it here, and then you can take out that bracelet very easily. But very often these watches come without drilled lug holes, and then you have to remove it from the inside. And now, of course, the question, how can you do it without scratching the watch? An excellent method to scratch the watch is to do it with this thing here. And that's actually pretty hard to do. You insert this tool here in that slit, and then you push down the spring bar, and in that moment you misalign the entire endling a little bit so that the pin cannot go back into the hole. And then you do it from the other side, and chances are high that you are completely frustrated after that you have scratched your watch. But of course, I'm guilty here as well. I did it that way for years, but it's really a pain and not recommended in my eyes. So a better tool to do it is a spring bar. Proper spring bar tool looks like that. And the idea here is, of course, that you place these tips here, these tips, you place them on the spring bars. You kind of grab the spring bars, and then you squeeze the tool together. You squeeze the spring bars together from both sides, okay? I will not demonstrate this right now, because it's super difficult to do with the camera in front of your nose, but I think you get the idea. And these spring bar tools you can also buy on Amazon, and they come always with some more tips, because we have different spring bars. And some spring bars are very fine, very lightweight, and then you have bolder ones, and so you can equip your spring bar tool with these tips to do the job just nice. So big recommendation if you were a bit of a, let's say, bracelet leather strap flipper. This comes very handy, inexpensive, and with a bit of practice it's easy to use. And now let's go to the next watch here, an Omega Constellation 60s on a Caseback #1 strap, and from time to time I want to change that strap to replace it against another one, or just change it against another color. And I think we all know this. This is very often when you're a watch collector. From time to time you have to change the leather strap. How to do it? They will arrest me for this. This definitely needs a bit of practice, because you just put the blade between metal and leather without damaging the metal. And I wouldn't do it on a brand new watch, but with these older watches it's possible, like this. See? So this with a knife. You can also do it with a very cheap kitchen vegetable knife. You know, these very simple small knives. They are not very sharp, they're not very hard, and they do the job just fine. But this is not recommended for new watches. Do it on your own risk. But for me, this really, really works. And now, how to put it back in place? Well, you just put it between these lugs, and then you insert one pin in one hole, and then with your fingernail you just can push the other side down and you can reinsert it. You can also try one of these brass. This is from a dress shirt. Charles Turret delivered this. This is softer than metal, so you cannot scratch this metal really hard. And the idea now is just to put it like that, and then you can push the pin down with this brass thing. Another nice tip is when you really are worried about your watch, then you can place a bit of tape on the lug, from the inside on the lug, so that you can manipulate without any risk here. This is a very good thing, especially when you equip a watch with the strap let's say you want to sell, for example. And another little tool is this kneadable eraser. You can erase things with it, of course, but you also can put little screws or these tubes on top, or you can put it in a little bit and you will not lose it. And in fact, something similar you find in jewelers shops to not lose tiny parts. Kneadable eraser, you find it in every stationery shop, so very inexpensive. Okay, and now let's speak about refreshments. Refreshments for your watch. I think most watch collectors have a bit of polishing tools in their collection. Here you see, for example, polishing cloth made by Caseback. Many people have it. It does the job just fine. This is basically a piece of cloth in oil with abrasive material. And I will not pull it out of the packaging here because it's super sticky with oil. But it does the job. It polishes small scratches, so micro scratches away entirely. So a really good thing to clean and polish your watch a little bit. This is not an affiliated video, by the way. This is my free opinion. But when you have a watch with brushing, of course you shouldn't use that so much because it will change the surface of your watch. For example, when you see now here the bracelet, then you see a lot of scratches, but you see that's a brushed surface and you cannot just polish over a brushed surface. There is another tool for this. Electricians use this very often to clean contacts, and it's sort of a brush. And with that brush, you can actually treat brushed surfaces. You just rub over this surface. And when you look closely now, you see that there is an effect. So you could treat the entire bracelet with that brush, and you would look like this. But the quicker ways, of course, is to give it to a watchmaker, and then he or she can do that job for you over the entire surface in a second, because they have specialized machines for that. But in case you have smaller spots, smaller scratches, you can buy one of these to get rid of. Unfortunately, I don't know the technical name for this, but I do know that electricians use them to clean contacts. So this as a hint. And so this combination here works for me just fine. And by the way, this is a Laurier watch, so you have here a plexi crystal. And of course you can also polish that plexi with every abrasive material you own. So you could actually use Caseback for it. You could use super fine sandpaper. You could use your toothpaste. Although many specialized watchmakers say don't use toothpaste, it's not the real deal. And in fact, Laurier delivers their own paste to polish that crystal. And the reason is just that not every toothpaste is similar and equal. Some are a bit more grainy than others. And so this is a bit of a risk there. And so my recommendation is just get in possession of some polishing tools and then try them out on a spare crystal or on a cheap watch, on a broken watch, until you're sure what works and what cannot work. And a little tip is to give a plexi the last polish is a piece of leather. Because we sharpen razor blades, for example, on leather, and other leather working tools actually you sharpen on leather. And again, it's a bit abrasive, not really, but it gives the last shine to a plexi, especially when you have this jeweler's rouge. This is a little cream you put on the leather, and then you can just rub the leather over the crystal. And this certainly will clean everything, and it also will polish the crystal a little bit so that it's really transparent and nice to look at after that. And this is the last tool I'd like to show you. This is for professional watch dealers and watchmakers. Imagine you have to handle many watches with screw-down crowns. Let's assume you have a large collection and you want to wind every watch here and then you have to unscrew a lot of watches, and this can lead to sore fingers. Believe it or not, I had that you have here a red spot on your finger, and it's very uncomfortable. And so pros, and I have this from Cormac Hanley 470, pros use just this, and then you grab the crown here and then you can unscrew it, and you can screw it very, very easily. And this thing here I think is a soft metal, so it cannot really scratch the crown, but I wouldn't use it for, let's say, 18 karat gold crowns. This would be a bit too risky. Alright, and these were my tools. If you have an addition, if you have other recommendations, then please don't hesitate. Put your tips in the comment section. Welcome back, and now it's time for viewers' images, the images you send to casebackwatches@icloud.com. And the first one comes from Robert from the United States, and he sent in this Rolex Submariner. And he writes, I present what is, in my opinion, the last of the great subs, the 14060M, and because of the upgraded 3130 movement and superluminova instead of tritium. The dial is symmetrical with no date and Spartan with only 2 lines of text. The anodized aluminum looks more like the 6204, the first sub, or the 5513, than the modern-day glossy ceramic versions. The 40mm case is slimmer and the lugs thinner for a more subtle and elegant aesthetic. And the gently tapered bracelet with hollow end links feel lighter and more comfortable. Modern subs by comparison are as solid as a bank vault, but are brutish and lack the same charm. Yes, and I think with that opinion you're in good company, Robert, because many people see it that way, I think. And I think many people would buy more vintage Rolex watches when it would be possible, because it's very hard. And we all know that there are certain references that are extremely pricey. And I have, I'm not the super Rolex aficionado, but I have my 80s Datejust. I had once a 60s, also very interesting, but with all the quick set. Anyways, I really love my 80s Datejust because of these reasons here. It's a bit more lightweight, bit more refined, bit more elegant than the modern, and glossy is a good keyword here. I have the 16030, and this is a watch with a certain bezel, steel bezel, and so really the opposite of glossy, and I absolutely like that, because then this dial can shine. And recently I had that idea when I was producing the Indiana Jones video, where I created watches for Indiana Jones with the help of AI, if you find it there, in case you haven't seen it. And the result was just so great that I thought, why not buying a vintage bubble bag, Rolex bubble bag, so the really old model. And of course you find them online in every condition you can imagine, at every price point you can afford or not afford, but I'm not through with that idea. Maybe I will really do that, or try it at least, to find the Tim Rolex bubble bag. That would be very interesting. So Robert, thank you very much for that image here, and for your thoughts and your text here, which is pretty helpful and teaches us something, I think. So next image comes now from Paul, and Paul is from Scotland, but now in the US, and he writes, I wanted to send you this picture I took when I was in Napoli, one of the castles there, against the backdrop of the clock tower inside. This is one of my favorite travel watches, as it has radio syncing. As you can see, the hands of the clock in the background don't quite fit to the clock. Yeah, this Casio, I will not pretend that I'm the biggest Casio fan. I think it wouldn't be so credible, but I really respect your choice. I mean, it's a very handy thing when you have there a world time that always functions, always is functional, always is set to the local time. But I think that Paul knows that I and many viewers here are a bit more on the other side of the watch game, and so he added this amazing piece. Look at this. And he writes, the other one is a vintage Weiler, I don't know how to pronounce it, very sorry. I propped up against a wooden model hot rod, and that's a beauty, man. That's really a beauty with this nice square case, just nice. And I would love to see this on a wrist to figure out how big or how small it is, but that's definitely something I would buy in a second. So Paul, also to you, thank you very much for sending this in. And dear viewer, as said, casebackwatches@icloud.com. This is the email address with which you can participate here. And that's all for this episode. Rolex bubble bag, man, this would be something great. Imagine now, Rolex bubble bag like this thing I created with the AI. I have the field guide, vintage Rolex field guide here in the room. Maybe this could be a nice project for future times and videos. Anyways, this is the end of this video. Thank you very much for your attention and see you next Friday.